From then on, we launched Siri as an app on the iPhone first. It took us 2.5 years to build that. And then a few months after we launched, Steve Jobs, walked into our office, and then the rest is history.
Welcome to GrowthMates, the place to connect with inspiring leaders to help you grow yourself and your product. Here you can learn how companies like Dropbox, Adobe, Amplitude, Canva, and many more are building excellent products and growth culture. Please press follow to support us and get new episodes. This time we talked to Mohammed, formerly a product lead on Apple Siri, product marketing manager at Google, and currently a co-founder of DesignPro. Mohammed shared his journey from studying at Stanford to building innovative products, reflected on his time at Google and Apple, highlighting the different cultures and approaches to innovation. I felt so inspired after this conversation, especially when Mohammed shared how Steve Jobs entered the room to acquire Siri, how he embraced trial and error to be okay with failure, and how he uncovered that creativity is a fundamental aspect of human nature and should be prioritized in product development. If you find this show valuable, please share it with one of your colleagues or friends. It gives huge support to continue creating it. To receive all episodes right in your inbox, subscribe to katesuma.substack.com. With that, let's dive in after a couple of announcements. This episode is brought to you by Appcues, the platform that helps you design, deploy, and test captivating onboarding experiences in minutes, not weeks. Appcues created the Product Adoption Academy, which includes courses, templates, and examples to help you level up your product adoption, and you can use it entirely for free. Check out the 5-step growth flow review template, which I created to help companies connect growth hypotheses with behavioral patterns to uncover meaningful improvements. Find an example of Dropbox Onboarding inside and use this template to review any growth flows in your product. Get the template through the link appcues.com/growthmates. appcues.com/growthmates. I have one exciting announcement for you. If you are keen on mastering product growth and activation, join the upcoming course, which starts on 15th of April. You will get a lot of frameworks to improve your onboarding and activation, practice on 2 projects that should be connected to your ongoing product work, and most importantly, you will receive personalized feedback on your ideas directly from us. For dear listeners of this podcast, we provide a 15% discount. Find the link in the episode description and use the promo code GrowthMates. And now, let's dive in.
Hello, Mohammed, and welcome to GrowthMates. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Kate, nice jumper. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing well, enjoying the weather. So happy to have this conversation. We already had a chat with Mohammed, and I'm so happy to have you here on the podcast to dive deeper into your story.
Yeah, cool. Just to introduce our guest today, Mohammed. So Mohammed studied in Stanford University in San Francisco Bay Area. Then he worked as product marketing manager at Google, and then he shifted to product-led on Siri, that afterwards was acquired by Apple. Then Mohammed has been director of product in several companies. He launched several products, and right now he finally has become the founder of DesignPro, which is an AI copilot for product design and development, and we will touch more on it later in our conversation. But just to get started here, I would like to understand, how is it studying in Stanford University? Here we see it in the movies, but we don't really get to experience it. So how was it, and why do you think it makes it so good for people?
So Stanford, had this very unique program. It was called the Product Design Program. There were only, I think, about 10 or 15 of us, in a class. So the first thing is the classes sizes are really small. The other thing I noticed about this program is that it had classes that were a different type of class. It wasn't sitting down at a lecture, writing notes, and having to do exams. It was a class where you were actually taught this method of trial and error, where you start with a problem, you actually get your hands dirty, build a prototype, you test that prototype with people, to get feedback, and then you iterate. And so it really helped introduce me to this idea of failure and being okay with failure and failing often and early. Stanford had this program. It was very unique, with the small class sizes, with the hands-on TAs and professors. It really felt like I was learning by doing. And it was really in this program that I feel like I learned how to create great products. And it felt like almost a superpower to be able to take this idea in your head and to be able to create it in reality. So that was a little bit about the program for me at Stanford.
Sounds great. And what kind of products did you create when you were there? Even as a student, was it anything special that you created?
Well, one of the first products I remember was a telephone. And it was just, a really simple product made out of plastic. We call it ABS. And we machined it. And, we had to think about the user, product differentiation, testing with customers, and so on. So that was my very first project. But then the project got more complex. Then we actually had to solve problems. I remember have this project where there was a balloon tied to a hook in the middle of a lake. And we had to build a contraption that went to that hook in the middle of the lake, untied the balloon, and let it go. And so we had to solve a problem like that. It was kind of like a robot. And later on, there were other projects too. I worked on a little satellite that went up 30,000 feet in the desert in Nevada. Then one of my last projects was actually a shaving product where we built this shaving product for Schick. And it basically, helped men, I see you have some stubble there, Oscar. So it actually removed all the stubble for you in like a few seconds. So those are some products that were pretty memorable.
Wonderful. It sounds like your beginning and the background is in product design and actual product design, not like typical digital products that we are talking about today. And probably it influenced you as a professional, as a product and marketing and design professional who you are today and the founder. But before we jump into this, it's interesting maybe to walk through your career with you, and if you can tell us about different chapters. So the next chapter, I suppose, was your time at Google as a product marketing manager. And then you got to Apple, where also the product marketing discipline is quite important. Could you tell a bit more first about your time at Google, maybe just briefly, before we jump into your super interesting chapter, get into Apple?
So I got this offer at Google in product marketing. It wasn't what I was studying. I was studying product design, but I decided to take it. I decided, hey, why not? I can always go back to product design if I want in the future. I started in the consumer division at Google. My first product that I worked on was Google Desktop Search, which no longer exists, but it was essentially a search product for your computer. Yeah, that's where I learned how to think about talking to customers, right? How to make messaging so simple, how to tell a story, which now looking back, I was so glad that I did, because I think that is so fundamental to product design and product management, is really about telling stories. Yeah, that's where I started. And I got this break where my boss at the time, Marissa Meyer, and Sundar Pichai, they had an idea. And it came from the fact that there were a few failures at Google, and those failures were quite public because of the nature of the company. They wanted to make sure that they launched products that were tested ahead of time. And so we together founded this product called Google Trusted Testers. And it was basically a community of trusted people, friends and family of Googlers that tested the products before they actually went out into the market. And so that's something that really stuck with as something that was important for a company like Google.
And what was this time? Was it like 2004, 3, 2? Yeah?
Yeah, this was 2004.
All right. Yeah, because it sounds like for us today that testing, validating before launching something is quite essential, and it's like just a norm. But I imagine in that time it was very innovative as well, and not all the companies were doing that, and Google was like introducing this as a norm of product design, which is essential and interesting. I'm very curious to hear about your transition to building Siri. And how exactly did that happen? Because looking at your LinkedIn, it's very fast transition from like Google then to Siri, building this product, and then get into Apple. And I would like to probably hear about the background story and what was happening there, how you created this product, how you came up with this idea, and what happened that led you to join Apple afterwards with this product that we are using today and millions of people are using today.
Yeah, I mean, I just like I got into Google by accident, it was not planned. In a very similar way, I had gotten in touch with a recruiter and she called me up one day. She was like, hey, there are these guys, they're working on something in stealth mode. Do you want to talk to them? The founder, wants to talk to you. And at that time, I was actually pretty happy, with what I was doing. But, for some reason, I said yes. And I took the call. And that call led into a meeting at the office. And, this was when Siri didn't even have a name. So the name of the company was Stealth Company. This was down in San Jose. And it wasn't anything impressive, it was just a normal office. But I met Doug, the CEO, and he demoed this prototype called Mobile How, which was actually at that time running off of a browser. I already understood, within a couple of minutes what they were trying to achieve, because it was the first time that you could really type into a computer system in regular English and it understood what you said, which was completely different from Google, back. And so that's how my story, began with Siri. But actually, the story of Siri began a long time ago, actually in 1968 with Douglas Engelbart. You may have heard his very famous demo. It's called the mother of all demos, where he demoed a personal assistant. Fast forward many years, Adam Cheyer actually got a chance to work with Douglas Engelbart and saw him as a mentor, right? In 2007, met Doug at SRI, the Stanford Research Institute. It was at SRI that they together laid out this vision. And at that time, it was a remote control for your life. In 2007, they realized something important had happened. The iPhone launch. There was a new type of adoption, and a new type of platform, right? A mobile phone. And this was really important for Siri because it really served as a platform for how people were going to interact with computers in a new way, right? By speaking into them. Phones at the time had these keyboards and they were not really user-friendly. And so touch and eventually speech became these new interfaces. At the same time, there was a NLP technology, natural language processing. There was speech recognition technology available that had gotten to be at an accuracy and consistency that was good enough for mainstream consumption. And so what Siri did is it really brought together these inflection points together into this mobile phone where you can speak, into it like you would to your friend or to your colleague. From then on, we launched Siri as an app on the iPhone first. It took us 2.5 years to build that. And then a few months after we launched, Steve Jobs, walked into our office, and then the rest is history.
Wonderful. Wow. It feels like I just got into time machine and got to the time when it was actually happening, building, and it was probably a gap of this personal assistance as a tool, and now it's getting even more important with the implications of AI, and we will get to that as well. But let's still be on this time machine, getting back to this moment when you joined Apple, when Steve Jobs walked into your office and somehow you joined Apple as a company. So you spent some time there. It was around 2010, I think. I'm wondering, because we were probably outside observing what is happening in Apple, launching all of these beautiful products. That was the time of innovations as well. But what was unique in Apple culture that time when you've been there inside?
Yeah, so it's interesting because my first job was at Google. And in many ways, Google is the opposite culture to Apple. Google is a very open culture. It launches products every week, in beta. It relies heavily on data to inform decisions. It's a very bottom-up approach. When we came into Apple, it was like a culture shock. In contrast, it was a more of a need-to-know basis. It unveiled products at a very strategic moment in a very elaborate, magical type of way. It was obsessed with the customer. It was more top-down. Very, very different way of innovating. But I think that's what surprised me the most, is that innovation doesn't come in one way or another way. It comes in many different ways, and it's really about finding the way that works for you. I'm sure the Apple way in another company would probably not work, but it seemed like, Apple had really found the right ingredients and the right combination to make innovation work, so well.
I think it's also connected to the first principles thinking that is also coming from Steve Jobs, his style leadership. I actually encountered the quote today. I don't know, it was a coincidence or a signal that we will talk about, and I will just probably voice it over because it's really intense quote, at least for me. So it's a quote from Steve Jobs: to shake off this notion that life is there and you are just gonna live in it, versus embrace it, change it, improve it, make it your mark upon it. Once you learn that, you will never be the same again. So I can imagine that probably being inside Apple that time, you heard a lot of motivational guidance from leaders like Steve or Johnny Ive or any other impactful figures there. If you had a chance to maybe interact with them in some form, or any advice that influenced you and your career, if you have anything like that, could you share maybe? Because it's very interesting that you've been with them at that time.
Yeah. So, I first met Steve Jobs when he walked into our office that day at Siri. We had all gathered in the conference room, and the whole room fell silent. When he walked in, it was pin drop silence. And you just know at that moment that something special is happening. But honestly, when he spoke to us, I asked him a couple of questions. He replied in a very matter-of-fact way. And it was really interesting because that moment was almost very normal, but also very special. I didn't actually receive any specific advice directly from Steve Jobs, but you get to make observations, from just watching him. One of the things I noticed is that he spoke with conviction. This conviction, it isn't backed up by any data or any external validation. He spoke with this conviction. And I think it comes from a kind of knowing and intuition. You can call it, one's taste or gut feel. I feel like almost make a mistake to feel like we always need external evidence to deserve to speak with conviction. I think we need to speak more with conviction, especially designers who are speaking to customers every day, who empathize with customers. That's one of the core principles. I think now we're actually seeing a new generation of CEOs, Patrick Collision at Stripe, even Jeff Bezos, Brian Chesky from Airbnb. They talk about the importance of empathizing with customers, connecting with customers, and they are able to make the decisions on the product, the CEO, themselves. And so I think that was something I took away from Steve Jobs, is having that conviction and really listening to your own intuition and gut, because the CEOs that do that end up doing incredibly well.
Yeah, this is a great advice. And I think that is also connected to my other question I wanted to ask you, that Apple is famous for its unique, I said design-led company culture, but it's not design-led, it's just a magical culture, but something there is very connected to the design and to the user and to this experience, focusing on quality of products and ability to tell the stories, as you said, share the value of the product through these stories. And product function operates more like also product marketing. And looking back, what do you think is the most unique of Apple approach to building products, and what maybe other companies can at least try to inherit? Because you've mentioned that, maybe if any other company would repeat the Apple approach, it would be probably not successful, but maybe some parts of that approach could be tried out in other companies.
I think there are inventors in this world, and there are also innovators. The inventors are the ones that come up with the idea, and the innovators are the ones who take that idea and deliver it into society. According to Matt Ridling, he wrote this book, How Innovation Works. According to him, history never remembers the inventors. They always remember the innovators. We all know Thomas Edison, But Thomas Edison did not invent the light bulb. In fact, there were 20 other people that invented it. He innovated because he was the one that solved the problem of what filament to use in the light bulb to make it practical, for use. And so how does this relate to Apple? I see Apple not as an inventor, but as an innovator. And it's probably the best innovator at scale, right? It can take a technology that is typically reserved for only a few people, relatively, small market, really truly deliver it, at scale. And at the same time, in a very personal way, into someone's home or into someone's pocket, right? I see 3 lessons from this theme of innovation from Apple. One is, of course, being obsessed with the customer. And in doing so, overcoming all of those hundreds of problems and friction points that prevent an invention from really being able to deliver, right? And being practical into the market. I think Apple is so detailed about that. It really gets it right. The second, I would say, is timing. Matt Ridley also talks about luck as an element of innovation. And Apple somehow gets timing right more often than it doesn't. And it somehow knows when an invention is ready. There's a whole ecosystem around Siri, for example, right? The iPhone, the technology, the market has to be ready, the applications that it connects to. So you really have to understand the timing when an invention is to scale. And then the last part is being able to tell a narrative, to be able to teleport customer into this dream world that they desire, and to be able to tell that story through your marketing, but through the product experience, right? To be like when you open an Apple product, you experience that unboxing, you understand what this product is about and how it fits into your life. Those are the 3 that strike me as some of the key learnings.
Yeah, I agree a lot that Apple is able to somehow predict the right timing for releasing the products, and we're seeing it now with the Apple Vision Pro, right? They just released it, but 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was Google already releasing stuff on this direction. How do you think they do it? If you know, of course. What's the rule? How do you know that the market is ready for something?
I mean, I think if we all knew that, if I knew that, we would be able to recreate. But it's so hard to recreate this elusive innovation consistently, right? I think a lot of people can do it once or twice, but to be able to do it consistently, I think, is another level. But I think this is where it really comes into really understanding customers, their psychology. What are they ready for? What do they desire? In some cases, when are they ready to manufacture that desire? Understanding technology, knowing when the technology is good enough and ready for delivering the great experience, and then telling that story, being able to tell a narrative around it. I think Apple does all 3 really well. And it, like I said, it gets it more right than wrong than anyone else.
Thanks for the answer. Something that it seems that is start to be the right timing is AI, right? So we start to see AI everywhere. So we are envisioning entire software run by AI, where you kind of introduce a prompt and the AI will answer something. If I'm not mistaken, Siri is not powered by AI yet. Siri reads from a database or something similar. How do you think that Apple can adapt to this new trend? Will it make sense to incorporate AI into Siri or merge it somehow? What should they?
When we launched Siri for the first time, this was a long time ago, right? 10 years ago, I would agree with what you said. It's not exactly AI in the sense of it doesn't learn, right, automatically by itself. So it doesn't have that machine learning component. It was more of an expert system. That's how I saw it. There's a classification of expert system based on rules and logic. But the Siri today is certainly very different. It would certainly, I don't work at Apple anymore, but certainly would have machine learning. But definitely, I think what ChatGPT has done is really raise the bar, when it comes to language learning, the ability to have a good command on languages. But Siri also is a bit of a different use case. While ChatGPT, it's about interacting in regular English and getting access to essentially humanity's knowledge, Siri was really about connecting to the Apple ecosystem, right? To be a new interface into email or Apple Maps or to Apple Music, things like that. So it doesn't necessarily have the same requirements or the level of AI, you can say, a big part of Siri was really the connecting to applications. In our case, it was the Apple ecosystem. So I think they will have to certainly build the product as to make sense, for that use case.
Okay. So it was an extension of the iOS, basically.
Yes. At least when that beginning, yeah.
Cool. Time to move forward. I would like to know, after your time at Google, after your time in Apple, after your time in several companies, what made you step from a full-time role, become a founder, and start creating your own products and going in this kind of adventure?
Good question, because this is something I asked myself a couple of years back when I turned 40, sort of entering that midlife crisis stage. I always wanted to start my own company because I had gotten a taste back at Stanford. Another opportunity at Stanford was a very entrepreneurial community. And so I got a chance to start a company, to get a taste of it, and to really love it. And so it always was in the back of my mind. But I also felt it was, for me, the purest way to deliver a beautiful product to the world whilst having freedom in how you spend your time and how you work. And so for many years, I kept looking for the solution. What is the startup solution that I want? What is the product that I want to build? I realized that actually solutions change, all the time. It evolves. Today, there may be one solution. Tomorrow, ChatGPT comes out and there's a new solution. I decided and I realized that I need to ask a better question. And that question was, who do I want to fight for, right? Who is the person that I want to be committed and fight for the next 10 years? That's going to be more permanent. I had just finished this book, Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull, who was the CEO of Pixar. And I was so inspired by his story because he built a company for creative people to do great work and to express themselves. That's what I realized I wanted to do. And I realized that, hey, back in high school when I was 15 years old, that's what I did. I designed and I created. And those are my people, the creative people. And so that's what led me to decide that I want to fight for them.
And how it went? How was the first years?
The first years of that? Yeah. So, I think like many entrepreneurs, there's a first months or even a year or so of just wandering, right? Figuring it out, finding that elusive product market fit. And it was really just on the third pivot that I think we found something that actually sticks and that people really want it. It really requires you sticking with it. But that's why I think when you find someone you're excited to fight for, you're really in it for the long.
3 years, it's a lot of time pivoting and trying to figure out what was that sticked more and that you found it got traction with the users. What was that product, if you want to talk about it a bit?
So the product that we have come up with is a product called DesignPro, which is a co-pilot for product design and development. What it does is it analyzes a lot of that messy data and communication that designers and product managers have to deal with, like Slack threads, Figma comments, Jira tasks, video calls with customers. And what designers and PMs want to do is really be creative, right? They want to create great products, not get bogged down in organization. And so that's why we decided to build this co-pilot that helps designers and PMs get organized, right? It's almost like having this project manager by your side, a companion, and it always keeps your tasks updated, generates beautiful lists of tasks, labeled for you, written out well, synced with Jira, all of that stuff that at least I, myself wish I had. And that's what we decided to build and run with.
It's amazing. I personally, as a designer, find this problem where you get a lot of feedback on Slack, then you get comments on Figma, then, I don't know, you get lost in groups, and there is so much feedback that it gets lost. And especially if you're targeting something that you cannot work on it now, but maybe it's something you want to work on the next quarter, that for sure will get lost. And you will forget, and someone will come up again with this feedback. Was that the intention of the product, actually solving this problem space? Or where did you start it in order to pivot into that space? I'm just interested because you probably explored many problems that designers and product teams are exploring nowadays.
Well, it really started with connecting the dots, right? As Steve Jobs says, it's easier to connect the dots looking back. And so as I look back, in the last 20 years, when I first started in 2004, I feel like that decade was really the decade for software engineering. It was really about the algorithm. The algorithm is what determined what ads you saw. And, we were using products like Facebook and Google, which are very ad centric. But then came the decade of data science, right? And that's where data started to drive our decisions and A/B testing and all kinds of other ways of building products and servicing customers. I feel that this decade is the decade of creativity, right? It's the decade where we as humans get to be more human because AI is actually doing the stuff, right? The organization stuff, operations, logistics, writing copy, all of that on our behalf, which frees up our mind space to be who we are and to do what we do best, which is to innovate and to create. So that's my bet. And I believe Figma has a bet as well, to bet as into this vision of creativity as a new productivity. So I think there's something stirring in this area of creativity. And that's why the product we built is really about freeing up, the space for creativity for the people who want to innovate.
When you're talking about the space for creativity, you're merging it with AI somehow. What do you exactly mean?
So I see AI as sort of taking on the organization part, structured parts of our lives, whereas creativity, I feel, is still very human. It's the part that defines us as being human, coming up with ideas by connecting all kinds of different sources. I feel this is the area that AI has not really made inroads in. Whether it will in the future, I don't know. But I think as designers and product managers, part of our value over the next 10 years is around creativity in problem solving, creativity in finding solutions. And that's what really going to help drive innovation, right? Because as we talked about, innovation is a lot about solving these problems, finding new creative solutions to getting products into the market. That's my bet.
So making time and space for what's real value, which is creativity and problem solving and kind of.
That's right.
I think also reflecting back on my time as a product designer, then as a design manager, then as a leader of the department, I feel like I got into some trap of these operational tasks that took me away from this creative work, to be honest. And I feel like more and more like leaders or managers are getting into this trap that they just cannot be creative anymore. They don't have fresh air. They don't have space for that. And what even shocked me is that even individual contributors, product designers are also getting into this trap of like replying to feedback, commenting, managing tasks, and they don't have space for creativity. They have fully booked calendars and they don't have this space. So hopefully with these products like yours and other like implications and good use of AI, we can just allocate more time for this creativity. Otherwise, I think it's very hard to be fulfilled with your job and what you are doing on a long run. And maybe this leads me to my question that I wanted to ask you as well. What is your philosophy? How do you combine this product design and probably product marketing perspectives today as a founder? And we are here on this podcast with Oscar also trying to match these disciplines of product management and product design, unite them, because we believe that they should go together hand by hand. And in companies and in mindset of both, like product manager should have a little bit of user experience mindset and product designer should have a little bit of product management mindset. So how do you match these two mindsets maybe, and how it informs your personal philosophy of building products?
Well, I think lately, one of the core parts of my philosophy of building products, it doesn't sound impressive, but I mentioned it earlier, is around trial and error. And Matt Ridley talks about how in history, several examples where trial and error outperformed the smartest and most well-funded teams, right? Who end up sitting in a room and discussing and talking about it. So the people who go out and put something out there and learn by doing, right, are the ones who actually perform the best. And it turns out that even Brian Chesky, from Airbnb and others like him didn't know what they were doing in the early days of Airbnb. And I think that's almost a reprieve for us to know this, because there isn't some special person or, you're not born, creative. It's something that you can learn. They didn't know anything that you don't. But if you're able to create a process that allows you to learn and fail fast and cheaply, it's accessible to everyone to be able to build and create great products. So I think that's one of the things that I've been thinking about, is how to create processes for people to follow, to make it accessible, to really build what it is in their head and to gain the superpower like I did at school. But also another thing that sticks with me is something from Ed Catmull from Pixar, where he created a brain trust. And that brain trust included a very select group of customers and stakeholders that you get constant and candid feedback. And so Ed Catmull did this for Pixar movies, and he credits it as one of the key things that allowed him and his team at Pixar to create consistently hit movie after movie. It's the opposite of some of the other movie studios who, wait till the end to unveil the movie. Ed Catmull and Pixar was literally testing, his movies every week. And I think that requires some humility, right? Understanding that they don't know the answer, that they are also trying to learn and get feedback. So I think having this mindset can also help, us, as a philosophy for building products.
Absolutely. And also some vulnerability to listen to this critical feedback from your customers and actually apply it, not ignore it, not like mix it with your gut feeling, even if it's very strong and opinionated. I think I noticed a lot of times, maybe when even doing a beautiful research or being in touch with customers, it just goes to the Confluence page with some outcomes, but nothing is used or nothing is applied, because sometimes we are scary probably to change things, to pivot things, to make it different. But what you are saying and sharing is that these examples of like role models, like Creativity, Inkbook, and like Apple as a company, they probably listened to that and they were not afraid to pivot, to change dramatically their direction. I think that is something that is missing today as well in our era of like also super structured product work. So maybe this is an interesting point just as a reminder for everyone. We are getting close to the end of this episode. This was very, very interesting, insightful, and inspiring. We have a tradition of a lightning round in the end, when we just ask you some questions. You don't have to think a lot. And you already shared a lot of valuable insights, but let's do it a bit more.
Sounds good.
First, I wanted to ask you about your choice of today. If it's like, what do you prefer more today as a founder? What inspires you, product design versus product management? But I believe you are managing to combine it somehow that makes you creative day to day. And maybe the question that I have from my side, being an independent person, creator, and maybe founder at some point, what is the most fulfilling creative routine that you have today as a founder that, fulfills you every day when you wake up, if you have such an example?
I think as a founder, you have to wear many hats, right? You're talking to investors, you're talking to partners, and so on. But I think the most important hat to put on is the hat of your customer. And so I have a morning routine. Doesn't happen every day. I wish it did. But I'll go to a coffee shop. I'll take just my sketchbook with me, and I will just pretend that I am my customer and just start writing down thoughts, and desires and wishes. And if I had the product in my hand, what I would wish for, right? What I would want. So I just start using, again, my own intuition, my own gut to come up with answers rather than external factors. And it's almost like a private brainstorm with myself, but with a role-playing type of exercise.
Wow, it sounds very interesting. I think we need to try it as well. And I think it can be useful for anyone, not just for a founder, for a designer, for anyone who is building a product, just to do it in a very safe space and pleasurable manner, that you are drinking some coffee and just writing down your ideas about the product and the problem space. This is very nice. Super. Okay, the next lightning round question. Do you have the best memory about your time at Apple? It can be super random, but yeah.
I mean, I do. It is probably the moment where we announced Siri to the world. I just remember being with the team in the corridor of our office, and there was just a buzz, excitement. We just somehow felt a sense of togetherness and that we had done something amazing. I would say, yeah, that was where it sort of came all together, and we sort of realized, oh, this is what we made, because, usually when you're building your setup in it day to day, you don't actually see the impact, So sometimes it's good to also set aside time to feel that impact.
To see and also to celebrate these moments together. I think all the time when I watch these Apple presentations twice a year, like these big moments when a group of people are creating a great story about what they've built, it makes me feel from one side excited about innovations and products and all the things I see, but other side of me feels jealous to these people, like, wow, you had this chance to celebrate it together. You have a chance to watch it later as a movie, maybe as a memory of your work. And probably even a small portion of that can be introduced in other companies. You shouldn't create a beautiful TV show out of your release, but maybe something small, like a win moment when you just get together in person, do this celebration, even as a team. Because sometimes we really, really miss that. Yeah.
I agree.
Wonderful. All right. So that was the second one. The third one, you've already mentioned a lot of books, Creativity Inc. and other things. I think we will add them to the episode notes. Is there any other book that you'd like to recommend about building products, about the philosophy of building products that you really enjoyed?
I mean, yeah, there's so many, but I think one that stands out to me as really seeing a story of one person all the way through from the beginning to the end is Shoe Dog, which is a story of Phil Knight and Nike. And I feel like that's such an honest account of entrepreneurship that we don't hear so often, because we always hear of the successes. But in that book, you get to experience the failures. And I think those are the moments that we need to actually, as founders, hear more often, because there's so many more failures than successes, and we need to know how to deal with them. I would have to say Shoe Dog.
Wonderful. I haven't read that as well. Actually, I don't know. So maybe it will be in my list to read.
Yes.
I watched a movie about Nike. Is it connected to this book, or you don't know the recent movie?
Yeah, I don't remember watching it, but there's a level of detail in the book that I suspect the movie will not gone into.
Yeah, it's always better to read a book. All right. So as we are getting close to the finish line of this episode, it was a pleasure to talk to you. What are the ways to connect with you for others if they would like to stay in touch with you or to observe how you're creating DesignPro?
Yeah, I mean, you're most welcome to add me on LinkedIn. My name is Mohammed Abdoolcarim. Feel free to find me. I think my username is mskarim, Carim. So I'd love to stay in touch. I post on and off some of the articles and the inspirations that I find. So if you want to stay in touch about that, fantastic. And I'll be sending more updates on DesignPro on there as well.
Mohammed, what do designers need to do if they want to try DesignPro?
So there's a Figma page on the plugin store. If you go to the plugin store and just search for DesignPro, DesignPro, and that's it.
Okay. Is it free?
It is free. Yes, we are still in beta. And so we would love your feedback. We're still improving it. We're adding more integrations, by the week, Slack integration, Google Docs, and so on. So we're just trying to help you synthesize all of your data into a beautiful task list for now.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. We will attach all the links to the resources you've mentioned, to DesignPro, of course. It was a pleasure to talk to you and huge inspiration for us and hopefully for our dear listeners as well.
All right. Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Oscar. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
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 Thank you for listening. If you found it valuable, you can support GrowthMates by sharing this episode with your friends and colleagues. Subscribe to our show on your favorite platforms and get all episodes to your inbox by subscribing to katesuma.substack.com. Let's keep growing together.